Welcome to another episode of One on One with Mitch Lafon. I am your host, Mitch Lafon. Joining me this week from Europe is Ian Haugland, the drummer. Got a new album, War of Kings. And of course, the band is finally coming back to North America to play after many, many years of being absent. And I have also got Eddie Trunk. We talk about Peter Criss, of course, Motley Crue, Guns N' Roses, and a lot of things. And joining me this week as my special co-host from Talking Metal, Mark Strigl. Good day, sir.
Hey, how are you, Mitch?
Good. Now, we say from Talking Metal, but of course, you're also working, I guess, with Eddie in a sense, right? On that metal
Yeah.
show?
Yeah, I mean, I was hired by VH1, but I am definitely working with Eddie behind the scenes, producing, helping produce the actual show, that metal show. I'm coordinating producer on the show, and then I'm handling literally all online content. We do special exclusive online stuff that gets posted on vh1.com and sometimes on the new youtube.com/ that metal show channel station
Yeah, and
place. Yeah.
what I was going to say, as a Canadian, I'm very glad that you're doing that because we don't have access to the show, but we do have access to the YouTube channel, and there's some great stuff. You had Alan Skolnick the other day going through his gear and stuff, which was great. And
Yeah, that's a great clip. And Alex, his guitar tone standing in front of him as he was playing, I mean, it's just so amazing. He has that perfect tone and sound, very similar to what Eddie Van Halen had on the first couple Van
Van
Halen
Halen
records.
albums, yeah.
And he just breaks it down. He even references that, and says what an influence Van Halen is on him, not only technically but just sound wise. And he breaks it down. He shows you, if you have you probably can't do it for anything less than $10,000. But if you have some money, you could buy everything Alex has, and you could probably get close to having his tone. Of course, the players and the fingers and the personality always adds to the tone too, and the sound. But yeah, this guy is just great. And I have to admit that when I was growing up, Testament wasn't like one of my go-to bands,
Right.
but I'm totally on a Testament kick right now, and just eating up everything they've ever put out. Great band, great player, and a really nice guy.
Yeah, I'm a bit like you. I never grew up being a Testament fan. Of course, I saw them on Much Music that we had up here and stuff. I really got into them after they played at Heavy Montreal. They came up. I think they've played it twice now or three times, and they're just phenomenal on that big, massive Heavy Montreal stage in front of 40,000 people. They just rip it up, man.
Right,
Really
right.
great stuff. Now, speaking of ripping it up, John Norum is the guitarist of Europe, and he is just a shred master. They've got a new album, War of Kings, and I sat down with the drummer, Ian. Are you a big fan of Europe, or do you know the band?
I wouldn't say I'm a big fan. However, they're one of those bands I have nothing against, and I
Right,
think a lot of people do have something against them because of the Final Countdown
right.
video and song. People are like, "Oh, you're a blah, blah, blah." But I tell you one thing. I was talking to the guys in Arch Enemy, specifically Michael Ahmet,
Right.
and he told me that Europe, Arch Enemy, melodic death metal band, and uh, great players always in that band. But he told me that Europe was one of the biggest influences on him as a
Right.
guitar player, specifically the first two Europe records. And he mentioned John Norum just being such an amazing player. So yeah, Europe, I think get a lot of
Well, they get a lot
uh,
of flack for the final
flack.
countdown,
Yeah.
and so
Yes.
with Ian during the interview, we talk about that. We talk about the final countdown. We also talk about, is it possible sometimes that you have a hit that's so big that it just overshadows your entire career? And he has some thoughts on that. And of course,
Cool.
since they've reconstituted back in 2004 with Start from the Dark, every album since then just becomes more of this hard melodic rock. They've really have changed from the 80s. They're not this sort of hair metal poodle rock, whatever you want to call it. They are just this crunchy band, and they're really tapping into the 70s vibe. You know, they're really tapping into Led Zeppelin and to some Sabbath and to some early Van Halen. They're bringing their influence in, and I think War of Kings, having heard the album, is sort of a culmination of the last 10 years of them just going for harder, darker, more, more
Right.
rock. And yeah,
Right. The Secret Society record from
yeah.
2006 was the one that really kind of made me take notice of them and just be like, wow, these are some really great heavy songs.
Well, that's the thing. You know, in 2004, I was Service Start from the Dark, and I remember thinking, ugh, Europe, what am I going to do with this? And I played it in the car with the wife, and we sort of both looked at each other and went, huh, okay. And then, like you said, then Secret Society came out, and we went, huh, wow, okay. And then Last Look of Eden, and then Bag of Bones, and it was just like, wow, this band is actually better now than in the sort of quote unquote heyday. And there's not a lot of bands that have done that. A lot of bands are holding on to past glories, and you're like, oh yeah, great, there's a new whatever song. But with Europe, you're just thinking, wow, they really have a new career. They've gotten better. So,
Totally.
kudos to them. Why don't we listen to Ian talk about War of Kings, Final Countdown, and of course, coming to North America for their first tour here in God knows how long. Here's Ian. So let's talk about War of Kings. Again, the band has gone into, I don't know, what would you call it? A more sort of classic, heavy 70s kind of sound?
Yeah, maybe it's. I would say the new album is much more like a trip. We're paying tribute to our roots in a more, let's say, relaxed way. We kind of. I think the new album is more. You can trace the inspirations back to Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, and Black Sabbath, and Thin Lizzy, UFO. All the bands that we grew up with, in a more, I would say more relaxed way. I mean, if you take the earlier albums like Start from the Dark,
right,
for instance, which was a lot more, I would say, inspired by Audio Slave's first album, for instance.
Right.
So on this album, we didn't really have any like certain album or certain artist that we felt that, okay, this is the kind of vibe we're going to go for. We just went in there into the studio and sort of, I think the main thought we had was just to try and recreate what we do live on stage, because people are always telling us that you guys sound so much better live than you sound on an album. So I think that is what we wanted to recreate, and that's also I would say the main reason why we approached Dave Cobb to be the producer, because his work with Rival Sons,
right?
That kind of
more organic,
live in the studio. I would say that 85% of what you hear on the album is played live, and then basically it's overdubs with guitar solos and some vocals and stuff.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the recording process, because nowadays bands don't have to be in the same room. You can record in your basement and then send the file over to the producer, and they can. Were you actually all in the same room doing this and playing it pretty much live, or was it drums on Monday, guitars on Tuesday, vocals on Wednesday? How did it come together?
Not at all. We were all five in the studio all the time, and sharing, like body odors.
That's great.
and stuff like that. No, it was very much us five live in the studio, and we were just like, playing along and having eye contact all the time, and which I think is so important, because when you can see each other and every facial expression becomes like a guidance for where the next bar is going to go. You know what I mean? It's like keeping that chemistry alive, being on your toes in the studio and basically like playing live on stage, So that's why I totally feel that this album is basically
a live album.
Basically, a live album. Yeah, that's right.
And I like the chemistry of bands that do that. I've always thought that albums that are recorded with the bands in the studio playing it live always sound better because there's that chemistry and there's that energy and that vibe. You mentioned Start from the Dark, which came out in 2004. For a lot of fans, that is sort of the second era of Europe. It seems that the sound from Start in the Dark all the way up to War of Kings has become more of this sort of Sabbath-y, Led Zeppelin-y, UFO-ish kind of stuff, and is a bit different than what you did in the 80s. Do you feel that too, that there is sort of two careers going on, maybe even sort of two bands, even though it's one band?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to start with, the songwriting procedure in the 80s was totally different because back in the 80s, around the Final Countdown and everything, it was basically Joey doing everything in his home studio, like completing demo tapes and with, like drum machines or whatever. He played all the instruments and then he presented like fairly well-produced demo for the rest of the band. So what we did when we went into the studio was, basically reproducing
what he did.
Yeah, what was already on the demo. So in that sense, in the songwriting sense, that was a totally different thing from now, the way we do these days. Because now it's more like, Joey comes up with an idea or whoever does, and then, just send it on the internet and, like Mick maybe add some whatever keyboard play thing, or John Norum comes up with some kind of a guitar riff, and just so we're all much more in the creative process from ground zero. We're working the songs and building the songs as a band, much more these days. Yeah.
Was that important to you when you got back together for the reunion? That if you were going to make new music, it had to be more of a band effort and not so much of a Joey solo kind of thing?
Yeah, I think we all wanted that, including Joey.
Right.
I mean, the reason why Joey did demos the way he did in the 80s was basically because he had a very, that was a kind of the frame of the songwriting mood or mode that he was in at the time.
Right.
But when we reformed, and started working on Start from the Dark, it was a different ball game. He wanted, as well as the rest of the band, to be more in the, the creative process from the start. So yeah, definitely, we had it wasn't like a condition for us for anyone to proceed with the band, but it was just a natural fact that we want.
Occurrence.
This is the way we want to work these days.
Yeah, and I've got to say, from the moment that I first heard Start in the Dark until War of Kings, which I've heard recently, it just seems the band... Whoops.
Yep.
Getting a lot of noise there.
Yeah, I'm walking across the bridge and it's kind of windy, so might be,
Yeah, the wind. I'm hearing the wind. But okay, so until War of Kings, it seems that the band is progressing musically on every album. It's getting more adventurous. It just seems the band is getting better as we go. And out of all the '80s bands, you're one of the only ones that have that I feel that for. You just keep getting better and better and better.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. I mean, I would say that, that might be one of the sort of one of the. That's one of the, I would say, the conditions that we kept alive in the band since we reunited. That we have always been on this musical journey, and I think that is the big driving force for Europe to stay on this musical journey. You know, to try new stuff, try new producers, new studios, and never really play the safe card, but go out there and explore and see where the road leads.
Yeah.
I definitely think that the band has developed a lot since like Start from the Dark, and definitely from the old era, so to say.
Now I want to ask you. So, you go ahead.
No, I was done. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask you about the upcoming American tour, but before that, the final countdown.
Yeah.
Is it possible that a song is just too big and too popular, so much so that it can actually hurt your career? Because it appears to me that no matter what you've done, from Start to Secret Society to Last Look of Eden, a lot of people just say, yeah, but that's the Final Countdown band.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we will always be connected to the Final Countdown,
the song.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's we will never have a hit as big as the Final Countdown ever. That's just a fact.
It's a given.
And I mean, you can choose to look at that in different manners. We at least for me personally, I choose to see it as a big advantage, because the Final Countdown gives us the opportunity to produce new music and to explore new musical areas. If it would have been for the Final Countdown, we wouldn't be here today. You know, we wouldn't have this conversation. I'm pretty sure if it wouldn't have been for the Final Countdown. So in my world, the Final Countdown is more of a blessing than a curse. You know, and also, I mean, people often ask me, don't you get tired of playing it live? You know, you played it millions of times, and I say, no, it's like playing it for the first time every night, because it's always a new audience, and the audience go fucking crazy every time we play the song.
Right.
So I never get the feeling that it's, it's like watching your favorite movie all over again, or listening to your favorite song all over again. Every time you hear it, or in my case, play it, it gives me shivers down the spine. You know, and just the fact that we managed to write a song that is
so good,
30 years later, still alive and kicking and affecting people's life, and still attracting a new audience. It's so amazing, that it's, I have to pinch my arm every morning when I wake up thinking about it.
It's because, a few years ago, I interviewed Doug Fieger, the lead singer of The Knack, and I asked him about My Sharona, and he said it was like a golden albatross. He said professionally, no matter what songs he brought to the record company, no matter what shows he played, people would always say, yeah, that's great. How about My Sharona? Could you play that? Or could you But at the same time, his pool, his house, his vacation in the Bahamas were all paid for by the song. So it was like, well, professionally, I don't really like it because that's all I am. But financially, hey, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Is that sort of the same way you feel at all about the Final Countdown? That, I mean, do record companies listen to your album and say, yeah, that's great, but I don't hear a Final Countdown on this?
Yeah, well, start with when it comes to the record companies. These days, we produce the album. I mean, we pay for we own the albums, and we hire the producer and we pay the producer from the Europe company. So we actually, when we approach the record companies, we come with a finished product.
Right.
So it's, in our case, it's more like, okay, do you want to promote this? Do you want to put it out? And if the record company goes, yeah, sure, then it's okay.
It's okay.
And we, we agree on a deal. Or the other, scenario would be like, no, we don't believe in this. And okay, so we go to some other record company. So these days it's a totally different ball game.
Ball game.
We run the ship, and if the record company wants to, be on
that way.
Yeah, then it's fine. And so it's more up to us to decide if we want to work with the record companies that we are approaching today.
Okay.
And no, I don't think, and also I don't think that we have that feeling that it's like a
golden albatross.
Not really. I
Okay.
mean, it's of course it would be amazing to have another hit that would. But you know what? I think every band, every classic rock band in history, they have a song, they have an era that defines them. Take Led Zeppelin.
Right.
They will always be connected to Stairway to Heaven. Black Sabbath will always be connected to Paranoid. Deep Purple will always be connected to Smoke on the Water, and Europe will always be connected to The Final Countdown. And being mentioned in the same family as these guys, I don't see that as a problem.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to suggest it was a problem. I was just looking at how the business reacts. I mean, when you did Out of This World in '88, you did Prisoners in Paradise.
Yeah,
I can imagine that somebody at Epic Records was sitting there going, "Yeah, but I don't hear."
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we had that many times, and I think it was more of a problem back then.
Back then.
Maybe on Out of This World or Prisoners of Paradise, when we released those albums, we were more, like as a band, as an artist, more sensitive to those arguments or to those sort of
pressures.
Yeah, exactly. But these days, as I said, we own the masters from the beginning. So if the record company doesn't want to promote it, then it's okay, fuck it, go to the next record company.
Next guy. When you got back in 2004 for Start of the Dark, what was the plan? Did you think that in 2015 you would have had 5 albums made and you were still touring, or was it like, okay, let's give this a shot and let's hope for the best?
Yeah, basically, I think we didn't really have any. We didn't really have any plan as such. It was more like we okay. Let's. I remember we had a meeting at Mick McHale's in Mick McHale's kitchen,
right?
And we were just like talking about this, and we had a couple of conditions, and one of the biggest, the most significant thing that we agreed on was that if we're going to do this, we want to continue on the musical journey. We want to explore things.
Right.
We want to let the music and the creativity be the driving force around this band, and not just cash in on the old stuff. Like many bands do that, and I totally respect that. Some of the bands from the 80s and 70s are basically touring around just playing the old stuff.
Right.
And
you could have done that.
We could have done that, but we said that if we're going to do this and give it a second shot, we're not going to let that be the driving force. We want to stay creative. We want to explore new boundaries. We want to take chances. We want to try re-establish the band and see where the road leads us.
A lot has been made of internet stealing album sales, and the album doesn't really work anymore. What motivates you to make a 12-song collection or a 10-song collection and call it an album? Why not just do 3 songs, put it out on the internet, and then tour and do the old stuff?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I think in our case, we're just too fucking old to
right.
to understand
The
a
new
new way
media.
yeah, you know, like releasing a song here and there. You know, we see, to us, music is you know, or a new album is every song serves a purpose, and to us it's like building a, you know, like building a house or whatever. You know, song number one is maybe, you know, set some kind of a mood. The second song is a kick in the ass. The third one is maybe a little more dynamic to bring down the vibe a little, you know, for the ladies. And the fourth one is, you know, like back again onto the, back on track again with a more aggressive song. You know what I mean? It's, we see, we're too old to see song by song. We want to create, we're still in the album world, you know, and,
Yeah.
and I mean, it may not be the smartest way to these days to record 12 songs and spend a whole lot of time recording and writing and stuff like that. But that's the way we are built, you know. It's just the way it works for us, you know. Yeah,
well,
yeah. We've been talking about that, you know, releasing maybe 2 songs and then go out touring and release another 2 songs and stuff like that. But I don't know. We never really came to any, you know, conclusion about that. I think we're too stuck in the old way of thinking.
Well, and I gotta say, I'm glad, and I'll tell you my personal experience with Europe. I was serviced Start from the Dark back in 2004, and I loved it so much that I went out and bought the Japanese bonus version so I could get some extra tracks. I then, I didn't wait for the media to be serviced. I went and bought Secret Society from Japan. I bought Last Look of Eden. I bought Bag of Bones. I have War of Kings on pre-order, even though I've already heard it. But back in the 80s, I saw you open for Def Leppard in Saratoga Springs, New York. And I saw a few songs, and you're not going to like this, but I walked out. I said, I don't like this band. But since you've come back and since Start of the Dark for the last 11 years, I've become one of your biggest fans because every album is better than the one before. And I got to give you, you know, congratulations for that. You've just gotten better with age. I mean, you're like a fine wine. You really have gotten great.
Well, I just have to say thank you very much for that. That's the, you know, the best you know.
Well, you're the
best words I can hear.
You know, you're the only 80s band, to me, this is only my opinion, that has made better music now than in the 80s, has become more relevant now than in the 80s. You're a better band.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just a better band.
That's great.
Not that you weren't good in the 80s, but I just think you're better now.
No. Yeah. Well, I in a way, I agree with you because I think very much, I mean, the 80s was, you know, the decade when we were defined, but we all always felt like in the 80s that we were a little bit out of time, out of place, because I mean our you know, like inspirations came from the 70s, and in the 80s we got a little lost. You know, we the music we made and the hits that we wrote and the exposure that we got in the media didn't really show the true face of the band Europe. And I think it's today is the you know, right time for us. We have the chance to play the music and to present the music that we the roots where we came from, you know, and we are.
It shows that you have the creative control too.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah.
I was just going to say, I was told we had about 20 minutes. We've gone over, but I do want to ask you quickly about the upcoming dates in North America. Europe, you know, I've interviewed Joey a bunch of times for the last albums, and he kept saying, well, we need a promoter who wants us. Well, it's too expensive. And there was always a reason why you couldn't come. So I'm glad to see that you're coming back. There's only a dozen or so dates. Is that just the beginning of more, or is this sort of like, hey, folks, you better get out to the House of Blues in Cleveland because you ain't getting a second chance?
Well, I really hope this is just the start of something new and something great in the States. You know, it's all I can say that we're so grateful that we're even able to go back to the States now and to give a couple of shows at these places. Because, I mean, it's, when you think about it, it's 10 years since we were there the last time, and before that, it's even longer. I think,
like 15 years or something. Yeah,
something like that. So, I mean, for us to have a third go is totally amazing, and I think these days, I mean, we have an American management, so if the time would ever be right for Europe in America, this is the time. So let's just keep the fingers crossed and hope that this will be, this will be it, So, but we all know that. I mean, it's easy to see America as a country, but America it's fucking half the world. So
it is, and Canada too.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, to be able to break through in Canada and America, you basically got to, well, preferably live there, but at least spend a year there touring. So we look at it in a realistic way. It's
yeah.
We'll go there, and hopefully this will start something up. So we'll take it step by step, but hopefully this is not like the final.
One and done, right? Yeah, I see that you're playing the M3 Festival in May out in Maryland. In August in Montreal, there's a 3-day festival called Heavy Montreal, and last year Metallica played, Twisted Sister played, 80,000 people showed up. I would definitely hope that you talk to your management and try to get on this year's schedule, because
that sounds like a beautiful place to be.
It's a beautiful place to be. That's where I live, and I would love to see Europe in concert. It's been way too long. I saw you, like I said, with Def Leppard. This must have been 88 or 89. So it's time. Yeah. It's time to see the band again. Ian, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And absolutely. Hope to see you down the road.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Take care now.
Bye-bye. There you have it, folks. My interview with Ian of Europe. Their new album, War of Kings, out now, actually. Definitely worth checking out. Unfortunately, they don't have any Canadian dates, or at least around where I am in Montreal. But Mark, I think they have some around where you are, down in New Jersey, New York. Are you going to any?
The plan is to go see Europe and Black Star Riders, a great double bill.
Nice.
Yeah, at Irving Plaza in the I wouldn't call it Midtown. I guess it's like Union Square area of Manhattan on April 30th. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, that'll be cool. Yeah, I'm jealous. I would love to see the band. I was telling, or as you heard me tell Ian in the interview, I saw Europe open for Def Leppard at the Saratoga Springs Performing Arts Center, the SPAC, back in, I guess it was 87 or maybe 88 or 89. And I so didn't like it that I walked up, I got up and I left until they finished. And now I've come around. Now I love the last few albums, like I said, all the way back to Start in the Dark, and I got to see them. I got to atone for my poor judgment of the late 80s. There you go. But
cool.
Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on to talking about that metal show in Eddie Trunk. Eddie gave me a call the other day, and we had a nice chat. What a successful show. When you think about it, that metal show really is the only hard rock heavy metal show on regular TV, on sort of corporate America TV, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And a lot of credit has to go to VH1 Classic, and specifically a guy who probably doesn't get his name mentioned all that much in the press, but Jeff Bumgardner, who is I wouldn't call him a metalhead. he told me the other day my favorite band is the Black Crowes, but he is a fan of that metal show. And he just loves Eddie. He loves Don. He loves Jim. And he fights for this show. He works his ass off on this show. And he is the head producer of the show and the one who really brought it to life and has helped it have such a longevity on VH1 Classic. And I've just heard some of the stuff that he's done to help promote the show and go way beyond what your average TV show producer would do. And it's just really proven to me that he just really loves this show. And he is one of the big reasons I feel that it's been so successful.
Right.
And I mean, Eddie is obviously one of the other major big reasons, and Don and Jim and all the great guests they get. But Jeff Baumgarten needs to have his name mentioned.
Does that name sound familiar for a reason? Because I remember in the late 80s and early 90s, there was a manager of bands called Jeff Baumgartner. Is that the same guy? Do you know? Or is he just two people that share the same name?
It's got to be two people that share the same name, because Jeff is like a TV guy, and he probably in the late 80s was probably still in college, if not high school.
Gotcha.
Probably high school actually, but yeah. So probably a different Jeff Baumgartner.
Okay, yeah, and in terms of Eddie, I love talking to Eddie. He just gives it to you straight. There's no stepping around issues. There's no agenda to what he says. You ask him a question, you get a straight answer. And listen, we talked about the Motley Crue reunion tour. Do we think it is actually, or sorry, I should say the farewell tour, not the reunion tour. Is it actually farewell? We talk about Guns N' Roses. We talk about Paul Stanley and Kiss using some enhancements at a show in Tokyo or out in Japan recently. Just a lot of great stuff. And of course, we talk about that metal show. Anything else you want to add?
No, just people should tune in every Saturday night. If you're in the States here on the East Coast, it comes on at 9:00. If you're in the Chicago Midwest area, it is on at 8:00 every Saturday night on VH1 Classic. And sometimes they re-air them in HD on a station called Palladia. And you can also watch them on HD online on VH1.com.
There you go. And of course, if you're in Canada, find a way to hide your IP address and then go to VH1 and watch the episodes. But there's got, somewhere, somehow, we've got to get that metal show on Canada. We have Much Music. We have Music Plus. There's like 500 channels on cable up here. There's got to be somebody who will buy it and put it on. There has to be. It's got to be done.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they do have this new YouTube page that I mentioned earlier, but unfortunately, they're not putting the full episodes up there, which is a shame. You would have really liked the episode. I
would have liked them all,
weekend.
Quite frankly.
Yeah, but they had this great debate on Kiss Dynasty versus
Kiss Unmasked,
Kiss Unmasked in the throwdown section, and then it continued on into the after show, which is the online thing, and it was just really the three guys and the three guys in Anthrax just having a good 15-minute discussion on Kiss and those two records, and some really interesting and good points that were brought up.
If you ask me that question, which one would
what would
pick?
you go with? Yeah,
well, that's a tough one. That is a really tough one, and I have two personal connections. Dynasty was the first album that I actually purchased with my own money. My brother had Love Gun and Destroyer and Double Platinum and lying around the house, and I had loved and enjoyed those ones for years. And Dynasty was the first show I ever saw by any band, August 6, 1979. So that whole Dynasty era is very special, but Unmasked is the first album that was ever given to me as a promo copy. It was handed directly to me by Gene Simmons when I did my interview when he was 11. So I have a connection to that. So, that's a tough one.
Yeah, it is a tough one. And I think a lot of it has to do with what age you were.
Well, yeah, because I'm fighting two childhood memories. That's the problem.
Yeah. And I feel like Scott Ian, who's, in his early 50s now, like he was turned off by Dynasty and even more so by
Yeah,
Unmasked.
that's
But
right.
for a guy like Alex Skolnick, who's actually a part of the conversation too with the Anthrax guys and Don, Jim, and Eddie, like he mentions seeing Kiss on the Dynasty tour, probably in California where
Right.
he grew up, and saying that it was just one of the best concerts he'd ever seen in his life.
Of course it
Whereas
was.
I guess the
I
guys,
agree.
yeah, the Anthrax guys and Eddie, who had seen him in New York, on that tour, said that it wasn't that great of a show, and or at least the Anthrax guys say that, and maybe there was some technical issues too. I think they mentioned at the New York show on that tour, but yeah,
Well, plus it's a
Dynasty
New York crowd. I mean, the New York crowds are a little more, well,
jaded, yeah.
yeah, they're tough. I mean, you really got to impress people in New York to get them to stand up and shout for you, because it's a tough crowd.
Yeah, but Unmasked for me is a pop record, but it really touched me, and I think there's just some
Yes.
great, great songwriting on that record.
Yeah, Naked
Um,
City, Tomorrow.
yeah, She's So European. I love that. Two Sides of the Coin. So much good stuff. Talk to Me is
Is
great.
That You?
Is That You? Yeah, every song really.
Shandy, yeah,
Yeah,
but then again, Dynasty. I mean, I love Charisma. I love Hard Times. Dirty Living is a good Peter Criss song. Save Your Love's a good Ace song. Uh,
yeah.
okay, you know what? Tonight I'm going to say Dynasty, because it was part of me buying it the first time and the first show, and it set me off into the whole rock stratosphere. Ask me next week. I don't know. Maybe it'll be Unmasked by then.
Right on.
There you go. So let's speaking of Kiss fans and Kiss, let's talk to one of the number one Kiss fans, a guy who talks to Peter and Ace quite a bit, and of course has his opinions on the current lineup, Mr. Eddie Trunk of That Metal Show. Hey Eddie,
Hey, Mitch.
how you
How
doing?
you doing, man?
Good, good. Long time no talk. It's been about a year or so, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. How's everything going? Okay.
And we have a great festival up here. We have that Heavy Montreal festival up here with all the bands that you like. So you might as well just come and join us, right?
Yeah, no, I've heard about that festival. One of these days I'd like to get up there. I mean, I wish that the show, if they put my show on in Canada, would be great, but that's just doesn't seem destined to happen. So,
Yeah. So let's get started then with That Metal Show, season 14, which is a testament to the work you're doing and of course the fan base. Um, what's sort of the secret of success here? What's keeping you on the air all these years?
well, I think it's a couple things. I think that we are a big fish in a very small pond.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is twofold, actually. We are on a channel in VH1 Classic that is custom made for what we're doing. And that honestly, it's not CBS, it's not NBC, it's not this huge network with this tremendous ratings pressure. That we're a good match, and
Right.
we have been able to become the flagship program for the channel, meaning the main reason why people come to VH1 Classic. So it's a good position to be in the sense that we're on the right channel, we're in the right place, we have the right support, the audience is finding us, and we are the flagship pretty much for the channel. The downside to that, of course, is that because it is such a relatively small channel, we have a lot of limitations, and we're not able to do some of the things we'd be able to do if we had more budget to work with and more money. Viewers just don't understand how all that works.
Right.
I'm constantly asked, well, why don't you have bands playing? Why don't you have music in the show? Why don't you play videos? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do shows more often? Well, the answer to every question is money, and
Mm-hmm.
we have a lot of restrictions. But it all works out in the end because we're doing a show that people like and people find that, and it works for the network. And it's kind of the right niche for us. And I think the other big thing is that we made a decision a long time ago when we started doing this that it was important for us to be real. It was important for us to say if we didn't like something or did like something, and talk the same way we would on television
as we would if we were at the bar having a couple beers with our friends.
Right.
And that's not always going to work for everybody because people are so used to everybody kind of just blowing smoke and saying everything that came out is the greatest thing. And in this world of social media where everybody looks to jump and pounce at one thing or take it out of context, it's you're going to deal with some blowback from time to time. But I think it buys you a lot more in the end if people realize, hey, these are real guys that really like this stuff. They really know this stuff. They don't, and they're coming honest about what they do and don't like, whether you agree or disagree. Everybody's just an opinion.
Right.
But I think it's really important to keep that real element to the show, and we've managed to do that for the most part.
If you can, try to just set the stage for what it would cost to get. You had Geddy Lee the other day, and to get Geddy Lee to do Fly By Night, if you're looking at mechanical rights and sync rights and all, how much would a performance cost? I mean, are we looking at tens of thousands of dollars, or like, why is it so cost prohibitive?
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
I wish I had that answer. I am a producer on the show, but I don't get involved in that end of it. My duties in producing the show fall into some other areas, so I don't really work the numbers. It's never been a strong point of mine, and
Okay.
I try to stay out of that stuff. But what it really is, Mitch, is that you may be able to get it cleared. I don't know. It could cost you. Like, I'll give you an example of what these fees could cost. We had Zakk Wylde on the show.
Mm-hmm.
It was his birthday the day we taped once.
Right.
And when he walked out, we were going to sing Happy Birthday to him.
Right.
If we would have sung Happy Birthday to Zakk Wylde on our set, it would have cost our budget, I believe the number was $7,500.
Whoa. Just for Happy Birthday.
Happy Birthday to Zakk Wylde.
Which is a public domain
somebody
song.
Because somebody owns Happy Birthday. It's a copywritten song.
Right.
And if people saw that show, what we ended up doing was having a mariachi band come out and play it and sing it to Zakk in Spanish. Because it was done in Spanish, it was less. It was like $5,000. But it still cost us that much money just for Happy Birthday. And, that was just somebody singing it. So it's funny when people watch the show and they might start to sing one of their lyrics or something. We're like, no, don't sing anymore. We can't afford it. People think we're just joking around. We're being serious.
Yeah. Wow,
and it's a whole different animal than obviously radio or anything else when you're dealing with TV. And these rights and clearance fees have gone up astronomically because the publishers are going for more money because the artists are not making money in record sales. Right. So it's all a big domino effect. And then the other factor, why it's such a hot button for us, is that our show replays constantly for years. Right. We have shows in rotation. We've been off the air with new shows for a year, and we've had shows replaying from 3-4 different seasons constantly for the last year. We're able to do that because we don't have to worry about continually paying those fees. If the music is stripped out of the show, we don't have to worry about that component of it. So we can do a lot more with them, whereas if the show was repurposed, went on in a new territory, replayed X amount of times, then a whole nother set of fees comes into play. So it's all a big headache. And if you're a big show, a big talk show or a network show, of course you have the infrastructure and the budgets and the people in place to work all that. We don't. We're VH1 Classic. We're that metal show, and we have to work within what makes sense. And that's just kind of scratching the surface of what's involved in it.
And that's the reality. But it must be frustrating being a music show and not being able to feature music. I mean, it's got to be exceptionally frustrating.
Honestly, for me, that's not really one of the big problems. I don't. The reason why I say that is because, of course, listen, in a perfect world, I'd like to be David Letterman or what have you for rock music.
Right.
In a perfect world, I'd like to have a band play a song at the end of the show. But losing that component for me is not that personally that big of a deal. And the reason why is because I am driven by the story. I love the conversation. I love getting the interviews and the stories and hanging with these artists. And in the day and age we're in now, where you can get music so easily through streaming services, through a click on YouTube, whatever the case may be.
Sirius
there
XM.
are outlets that you can do it. There are ways you can do it. And with the 46 or 44 minutes that I have on television, after you back out commercials, and 2 or 3 guests, I'll take the story over showing a music video any day. There's plenty of other places to see that. Now, again, in a perfect world, if I'm doing a weekly or nightly show, of course that would be a great component. I'd love to have the flexibility to do it. But there are other things. If VH1 was going to come to me and say, okay, we're going to clear up a whole other chunk of budget, what do you want to do with it? My first choice would not be clearing music. It would be doing more shows more consistently, doing stuff on the road, going out to festivals, going out to events, going out on tours, making sure getting the channel bumped up to HD, which we hear about all the time. Those are the things that I would focus it on, and then somewhere after that would come music clearance.
Let's look at some of the sort of the hot topics in music these days. Ozzy Osbourne had a No More Tours tour. Kiss had a farewell tour. The Scorpions had a farewell tour. Motley Crue, they are claiming that it is over this year. There will be no more Motley in 2016. Do you buy that?
Yes.
Okay.
I buy it when it comes to Motley Crue for a lot of reasons. However, I don't think that you have to read through between the lines here on this really carefully.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that this means Motley Crue is done. I think it means Motley Crue isn't going to do tours anymore.
Right.
It doesn't mean they may not play again and do a show. Doesn't mean that they couldn't do a residency somewhere again.
Right.
Doesn't mean they may not put music out. Doesn't mean they may not do a performance on a TV show to promote this movie if it ever comes out. So I think they're going to go case by case and do some things from time to time. But as far as large-scale touring, where they all have to go out on the road and coexist together for 2-3 months in a row at a clip, I think that's over.
Okay, so Motley Crue then is just, they're not touring, but you think they'll still go on as an entity, as a brand in a sense.
Yeah, and they've pretty much said that.
Okay.
I mean, I've read them say that this movie is still an ongoing concern. They still could make a song for it. They still could do some promotional appearances. I think they've said that. I think that they just all want to go their own ways. And I know, having spoken to Nicky many times, that this is being driven predominantly by the fact that he wants this band to end with the original 4 guys that started it. And they've had upheaval in the past. They've had problems. It's well documented. They don't really get along all that well.
Right.
And I think that he realizes the time is ticking, and he doesn't want to go out and have this band end with some diluted lineup with 2 replacement members. So
right.
That's really important to him, and I think it's a really good reason to end. It's just a case of if they actually truly do. And I think they'll stick to it. I think they will. I've talked to some of those guys well enough, to really see that I think it's very, very genuine that this is it.
Well, of course, time will tell. Now speaking of, original members being replaced and stuff, Dee Snider, friend of yours, took to Twitter the other day and for some reason decided that Doug Aldrich, who was in Whitesnake for a while, Burning Rain now, and Revolution Saints, he took him to school. He said, people who claim to be from these bands. What do you make of that? I don't want to call it a controversy, but what do you think of what Dee did and calling out Doug Aldrich?
Well, I had Doug on my radio show since that happened,
right.
And Doug is as baffled by it as anybody. I've actually exchanged a number of text messages with Dee. Ironically, Dee wanted to come on my radio show the same day that Doug did, having no idea Doug was going to be on, but Dee wanted to come on and explain this and talk with me about it and debate it, if you will, but he was unable to. And ironically, Doug was actually booked in that show to promote his new band. Both guys are friends, and both guys I've known for a long time and have history with. I would say this. I think that I can kind of understand what Dee is talking about, but I think that Dee picked the wrong example
Right.
when it comes to Doug, and why he. I know that Dee also later went on Twitter and said that he didn't mean to single Doug out, but it certainly came obviously across that way, and Doug took it that way, and how else could he have taken it? But I think that I think that I understand Dee's point with some artists, but at the same token, not when it comes to Doug Aldrich, because perhaps Dee hasn't followed Whitesnake all that closely in the last 10 years and known what Doug has contributed to that band. But the guy made 2 very solid studio records that he was the co-writer of every song and played almost all the guitars,
Right.
and was seen playing festivals and stadiums and shows all over the world as David's right-hand guy for 10 years.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense to a lot of people, and I love Dee, and I love the fact that Dee speaks his mind, and I'd happily, and I very soon might discuss this with him more, but I think that it was the wrong example to pick Doug Aldrich for that.
Agreed.
And listen, all these guys are going to find the tough business out there. They're all going to find whatever way and hook they could use to make a buck and sell themselves. But when you talk about Doug and minimalizing his contribution to a band that, let's be honest, is really always ever been about one person, and that's
Right.
David Coverdale, for Doug to have had a 10-year run and did what he did in that band is just as valid as anybody else who was ever in that group.
Yeah, I agree, and you're right in saying that of all the bands you could pick, Whitesnake is not the one where there's 4 original members that was a classic lineup, because when you look at it, there's been like 87 members in Whitesnake.
It's a revolving door.
Right. So that Dee's point is perhaps valid when talking about Twisted Sister or Motley Crue or Aerosmith or maybe even Cheap Trick, but with Whitesnake, especially with all the members that have come in and out, you go, all right, that one's a bit weird, but
yeah, I mean, that's I don't know why, and I think the reason why that name popped out to Dee is that Dee now lives in Vegas.
Right.
Doug is now doing a show in Vegas. I know that show is heavily advertised in Vegas, and I've seen that show that Doug is in. Before Doug was in it, Tracy Guns was in it,
right.
And they advertised him as being from Guns N' Roses.
Right.
Now that's a stretch.
Right.
That's a real stretch. And that if Dee would have went off about something like that, then that one I could have said, yeah. But you know what? Tracy probably didn't even want that like that. These promoters are going to use any tool they can to promote these guys.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And so you have to, you have to also try to find out where it's coming from.
You mentioned Guns N' Roses. There's been an incredible amount of stuff in the media these days. Richard Fortus gave an interview. Steven Adler, Slash tweeted Axl a happy birthday. Do you think it's inevitable that Guns N' Roses does a reunion show, a reunion Vegas residency, just plays together one more time?
I personally think it will happen. And I've said this in the past, and I've said this before all the things happen that you just talked about.
Right.
You have to take Steven Adler out of the equation, and I
Right.
don't say that at all to diminish Steven. I love Steven.
Right.
And,
Great guy.
A great guy, and I don't mean it in that way at all. I just mean it in the sense that Steven's been saying this for years.
Right.
I mean, Steven's worn it on his sleeve for years, and God bless him for it. I mean, he's just out there, no pun intended, banging that drum as hard as he can. The thing I worry about with Steven is that, I don't think he could ever recover from the fact that if they ever did do it, if they didn't use him, that would be, crushing to him. But you have to wonder what they would be thinking, because obviously that, Steven's the original, but Matt Sorum, may have something to say as well.
Right.
So it's an interesting sort of thing, and I don't know how it all plays out. But I think that why the drum beat is maybe a little louder than normal right now is a few things. you have Guns and the current Guns at a pretty high level of inactivity right now. There seems to be nothing happening.
Right.
Rumors that some of the guys that were in the most recent lineup are now out.
I've heard the same thing.
Rumors that Bumblefoot is out, and maybe other guys have left as well.
Right.
So how true that is and where that goes all plays into it. You have the fact that Slash tweeted Axl a happy birthday, which a lot of people looked at as an olive branch. And quite honestly, I've said this many times, only half jokingly. If you ever wanted to see a reunion for one of your favorite bands, nothing sort of helps constitute that than somebody going through upheaval in their personal life. And look at, Slash is going through a well-publicized divorce right now.
Correct.
So, I mean, there's a financial component that comes with that. I don't mean to laugh because it's a very serious thing, but these things play into all this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sebastian Bach for years renounced anybody even talking about Skid Row getting back together. And I don't think it was by any coincidence that when Sebastian went through his divorce, suddenly he was very much talking about wanting to do Skid Row again a few years ago. So, all of that stuff plays into it. There is a financial component to this. And the only thing that plays against it for me from Slash's end is I know how happy he is with this band.
Right.
And I know how hard he's worked to build this band to this point. And it's a great band that's made great records. And I don't know if he would crave the sort of drama and the something of that magnitude again. But let's be honest, the disconnect is Axl and Slash. And with what Slash is going through personally right now, coupled with the fact that he sent that tweet that a lot of people viewed as an olive branch, then you tie in the other end of it where Axl may be very well in limbo with his own band.
Right.
Who knows? I mean, who knows? It could be something that could very well be being talked about. I just don't know for a fact.
And even when you mention Slash's band that he has with Brent Fitz and Miles and all that, a Guns N' Roses reunion wouldn't last for 10 years. I don't think so. And so on the other side of the reunion winding down, I think that would be good for Slash's band. I think that would bring them to that next level and people would be very curious. So you never know. John Five is an upcoming guest. He has said publicly that he is working on an album with former Kiss drummer Peter Criss. Have you heard any of that album or any of those songs? And what do you think of that collaboration?
I haven't heard any of it, and honestly, I don't think that it's imminent. I think that Peter is at this stage in his life going to work very slowly and, if at all, doing much of anything.
Right.
And I don't know if and when we'll see it. I love Peter and I love John, and John is an immensely talented guy.
Absolutely.
He's a guy that a lot of people know, rightfully so, as this incredible guitar player. But what people don't know so much about John is his side as a songwriter, which is really, really incredible as far as and very diverse.
Oh yeah.
From writing for Leonard Skinner and Katie Lang and all these other people. So I think that Peter working with a guy like John, who is also a huge Kiss fan, is a great pairing and certainly would be extremely beneficial for Peter to try to make a rock record. I just don't know, as well as I know Peter, who is now 68.
Wow.
How much drive there is in him to really want to do this. I think that in his heart, he'd like to at some point, but then I think when it comes down to really putting the work in and sort of cracking the whip to try to do it is another story. And I also think that the touring end of it, there's a lot of people like, it's pretty much pointless to make a record these days unless you're going to go out and tour behind it, right? Because you don't have a chance in hell of selling it. And again, Peter, at his age, I don't know how much he's going to be wanting to jump in a van or a bus and go across the country in clubs and play a record. So I think there's a lot more to it than just saying, oh, this record's going to come out and it's in the works and all that. I think that it's still quite a ways down the line, and I think that there's still a lot of stuff that needs to be figured out with it.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly look forward to it if it does happen. Now, I was told we have half an hour. We've got about 5 minutes left. Recently, out in Japan, Kiss did a new song, Samurai Sun, and they admitted via Twitter and on their Facebook and all this that they used backing tapes. It seemed to have created some kind of controversy in the Kiss world. But you and I both know that Motley Crue, Queensryche, I mean, pretty much anybody, Def Leppard, everybody uses some enhancement. Is it a big issue that Kiss did this, or is it just like, ugh, get over it, fans? Everybody does it.
Well, first of all, Def Leppard does not do it. Outside of some tracks, samples that they need to supplement. Rick
Well, that's what I mean.
only has
But
one
there is a little extra. I mean, it's not. There's a little bit of
Def Leppard. The
they
reason
sing
I
them.
bring that up is that I think that it's really admirable that they don't, because
Right.
with their vocals,
Right.
they would be within their right to, because you would expect them to. But they actually put a tremendous amount of work into those vocals. I know for a fact.
Yeah. Let me correct that. I didn't mean vocals in this case. I just meant backing tracks
Anything.
where, like anything, where like a little extra drum fill or a little synthesizer to boost a guitar. Bands use stuff to enhance the overall sound. I wasn't
Right.
specifically referring to vocals, but the Kiss performance certainly seemed to have a little bit of everything. Is it just that's show business, folks, and get over it, or is the Kiss fan base somewhat justified in being upset? It's always hard to answer a Kiss question, I know.
No, not at all. I'm just laughing because, I mean, if I was still part of, I'm not. I as a Kiss fan, I'm way more upset about other things than they do than this.
Right.
But I don't. I think that when it comes to just that one song,
Right.
which I heard and is a very ultra produced sort of different sort of song for them.
Right.
If you're talking about just for that one song, I don't think it's a big deal at all. I mean, to be able to recreate that sort of production and what that K-pop stuff is live is virtually impossible. So I think that it's a case for me where they just decided, hey, we got to work this in because we're in Japan and it would be fun to do.
Right.
And obviously we can't recreate this, so that's that. Now, if they did it with the rest of their set, then you've got another problem. If they start putting, I am not a fan of bands running tracks
Right.
For vocals and instruments.
But it
I
is
think
an
that when it
industry
reaches-
standard.
What's that?
It is an industry standard. I mean, it's not unheard of.
No, it's not unheard of. I just think that it's unfortunate. And,
Yes,
and
agreed.
most fans don't care.
Right.
But I do. I want to hear it live, warts and all, as they say. And I applaud and really give the bands a lot of credit that still do that. Aerosmith, and here's the other thing. Here's my feeling about it, Mitch. If you're going to, there's nothing wrong with needing supplementation to perform something live that you did in the studio.
Correct.
Nothing wrong with that at all. But if you're going to do it, why not just have somebody do it? What I don't like is the smoke and mirrors approach to it, like pretending like you're doing it, but it's all on a computer. A great example of a band that does it right is Aerosmith.
Right.
Because Aerosmith has one guy that sits just above one of the amp stacks. He plays keys, he plays a little guitar, and he sings. And they're so transparent about it that 3/4 through their set every night, they introduce him.
Right.
They say, helping us out on keyboards, guitar, and backing vocals, here's Buck Johnson or whichever guy they have doing it on the tour. So that, to me, there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's still all live. And, yeah, we need a guy that helps us out a little bit. But the guys that have people behind curtains, under the stage, running just nothing but a ton of tracks, basically it's becoming karaoke, and it's just ridiculous. And the last thing I'll say about it is to me, the whole reason of going to a live show is for the inconsistencies, is for the energy, the unknown of what's going to happen on the stage, and being able to see the band actually do it. And if you're getting to a point where you're having bands just kind of virtually lip syncing and doing karaoke. What's the point? I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. That's the whole beauty of a live show, is the mistakes, is sometimes the feedback, to know that they're actually really there, and but
that it's live.
That it's live.
The beauty of a live show is that it's live. That
yeah.
Inherently in its name, it's live, and you're now getting into a situation where a lot of stuff is not live, and I think that sucks. And it also ties into the quote unquote live concert DVDs.
Yeah.
That are so prominent. You can watch any given concert DVD and look at it and see clearly that the whole thing has been re-recorded.
Of course.
And that the lead vocals, and what's the point? I'd much rather watch an old bootleg from '77 that a fan shot, because it actually feels like I'm at the show, because I know that's what the band really sounds like live.
Yep. I fully agree. And to that extent, it applies to live albums too. When a band says to me, "Oh, in June we have our new live album coming out," I'm not that excited, and especially if they say recorded over 3 nights, and you're like, why?
Well, I think that there was a lot of people when this Van Halen live record that's supposed to come out, and there were a lot of people that were already sort of grumbling, saying, "How live is that going to be?" Right. And I was told that they already put a statement out saying that it is 100% truly live.
Yeah, they've said that.
But I mean, who knows? I mean, who knows what's really going on with this stuff? And we've reached a point where bands that are actually doing live have to get out there and say it, because they want the credit for putting the work in, and I don't blame them. So who knows where this all goes? We've got bands with diluted lineups. We've got bands that are out there supposedly playing live that really aren't. That's why I think that the bands that are very transparent about it and actually are putting in the work and actually are still, valuing what it is to do a full live performance they should be applauded. As far as the Kiss situation, Kiss for years had guys off stage supplementing them.
Sure. Derek Sherinian,
Gary Corbett. For years, they had guys off stage helping them out. But again, they were actually playing. You just didn't see the person helping them out.
Right.
What they're doing now with this if it was just for this one song, I think that it's somewhat of an anomaly, that song. They're probably never going to play it in America or anywhere else. Probably. And it was probably way too ambitious to try to learn, and they just wanted to put it in their set in Japan.
Well, yeah, and they sort of had to, because it's number one in Japan currently. So how do you not play the number one single, right? So.
And what would it have taken to try to actually go through it? What you needed to do that live would probably be a little bit too much for just a few shows.
Well, just listening to it and all the instrumentation, you probably would have needed 15 people on stage. So.
Right.
It's not a Kiss show. And I'll finish.
In a situation like that, honestly, it doesn't bother me all that much, because it's a one-time thing, and it's not really that big of a deal.
Yeah, it didn't bother me either. And I'll finish with this, since we spoke about Doug Aldrich before. He's had a band of guys put together, Revolution Saints. What do you think of bands that, a label like Frontier that throws bands together like this? And then what do you think of the album Revolution Saints, if you've heard it?
I heard the record. I think it's okay. It sounds to me very much like Journey.
It does.
I like Doug's guitar playing. I'm a fan of Jack's. I don't really know Dean. I think he sings really well on it. I can't believe how much he sounds like Steve Perry. Right. But it's okay. It's not blown me away, and it's not. I think the one thing that you have to realize about the record too is the fact that if you look at it closely, those guys didn't write the songs.
No, they didn't. It was written by Eric Martinson of Eclipse and Alessandro, the producer. Yeah.
Yeah. So it really, you have to. When I see situations like that, it kind of makes you ask the question, what really is this? You know what I'm saying? It's like, is this really these three guys who are all great musicians just kind of going through the motions for somebody and being their band, or is this truly a band? And the fact that those guys are all good songwriters and virtually wrote nothing on the record kind of leads you to believe that, well, this is just more or less a project, and these guys were hired to execute what a producer in Italy wanted.
Right.
And to me, that doesn't feel like a long-lasting, cohesive sort of band.
No, but that's what Frontiers Records does. They grab these guys from different bands, and the owner of Frontiers says, "Hey, this will be a fun pet project," and sticks them together.
And the sad part about that, and listen, he's well within his right to be able to do whatever he wants, but the sad part about that is, honestly, most of them don't last a year, and some of them never even do a live show. And I think that the one thing I do have a problem with is that a lot of this stuff coming out into the marketplace, flooding the marketplace, taking the attention of guys like you and me who maybe like it or support it or get invested in it, and it never goes anywhere further. It's over before it started. And you're kind of like, okay, that was great. I just got done getting behind this band and banging the drum and saying I like them and playing them. And guess what? They never even made it to a live show. Seen it happen a million times. And I think that it's funny. For years, you would hear artists yell about labels' lack of artist development. And you have artists now in so many different bands that some of them are guilty of it too, because they don't stick around anywhere long enough to see something through. Huh. And that could be for a lot of different reasons, of course. And I know that they all have to do what they got to do to make a living, but these guys are all in a million different directions, and it's very hard to disseminate what's real and what has longevity and what truly is a band that's going to hang in there, and what's just a fleeting one-off thing. And there's way too many fleeting one-off things for my taste out there right now.
There are, and of course the band you put or helped put together, Winery Dogs, is one of the real deals that'll go on forever. Eddie, always a pleasure.
Well, I hope they do.
Yeah.
I hope they do. They've had they're working on a second record now, so there's certainly going to be some more life here. But forever is a long time.
Right.
But I hope they do.
Yeah, it's a great project, and I certainly wish them all the best. Billy is just an incredibly fantastic person, and Richie, talented. Mike, of course. Eddie, of course, always a pleasure. I always enjoy our chats. And
Mitch, same here. Good talking to you, man, and best of luck with your surgery, man. I hope everything goes okay.
Thank you, and continued success with that metal show, and of course your show on Sirius XM.
Sounds good, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. There you have it, folks. My interview with Eddie Trunk of that metal show. And of course, Eddie never holding back on his opinion. So refreshing. Gotta love that. Mark, you must love working with him, because you just get the real deal all the time, right?
Yeah, I really only see him on Tuesdays when we shoot the stuff, and then, I disappear with Jeff into edit rooms for the next 3 days as we
piece it
get
all
everything
together.
right. Piece it all together and get it ready for air on Saturday night. And he's Eddie's been great the Tuesdays that I've spent with him, but I also just love watching him on TV over and over again in the edit room as we put the show together. And I've enjoyed listening to him for like close to 20 years. I've been listening to him on FM radio here in the New Jersey and New York area, and I try to always catch his Sirius show on Mondays. So I'm just a fan of the guy, and to actually finally be working with him and being a team player for what he's doing with that metal show is just a real honor for me, and I'm thrilled to be there, and just can't wait for you guys to see these shows that we have coming up, because we have some really great guests that are going to be stopping by.
And I got to give it to him on the Sirius XM show. I bought Sirius XM so that as you get, it says, no commercials and all this, and you just get the music. But other than Howard Stern, he's the one guy that I can actually listen to and not say, oh, just play some music. I actually like listening to his conversations. Yeah. They're always well thought out, and he's an entertaining guy. So thanks again for Eddie for calling in and making that happen. And let's remind the folks that One-on-One with Mitch Lafon is part of the Talking Metal Digital Network. And if you want to find me, I'm at Mitch Lafon on Twitter. Mark, how about you?
Yeah, well, I'm at Talking Metal on Twitter or at Strigl on Twitter. I'm on Facebook.com. I think the address is /M Strigl, MSTRIGL. So you can connect with me in those places. And Mitch, I know you have a big day coming up with
Yeah.
your surgery, and I know I want to wish you all the best of luck with it, and I'm sure all the listeners do too.
Yeah.
And we're all sure you're gonna get through this fine, and we'll see you probably in a week for another podcast.
Yeah, of course. Listen, it's an ablation of the heart. They go in through the groin. They burn a little part of the heart so that I stop going into fibrillation. There's no cutting. They're not going through the cavity of the chest or anything. So should be okay, and I should be back on my feet within a few days, if not a week. And listen, I've got a war chest of interviews that I can release up until I can start doing new ones. We've got boy, Jack Blades is in the is sitting there. Kronos from Venom, who goes off
Wow.
on Henry Rollins. Art Alexis of Everclear. Lawrence Gowan of Styx. Um, Richie Kotzen. There's a bunch of good things, and while I am recuperating, I will make sure that they all get out and get posted.
Perfect.
So there you go. Thanks again, folks, for listening. And just quickly, thank you to all the online media outlets: Brave Words, Melodic Rock, Loudwire, Blabbermouth. All of you who have been reposting my interviews, whether it's the Dee Snider or the Doug Aldridge or the Guns N' Roses stuff, hey, thank you. Without you, it just makes it a lot harder to get the message out there. So I very much appreciate it.
Right on.
There you have it, folks. Thank you.